So we are starting right now.
Switch on.
So we are starting, right? You ready, all of us?
Yes, now we started.
All right. So good evening and welcome to today's session of web seminar organized by Tiwari and Associate. It has been an endeavor to bring the best and brightest of legal practitioners to connect with them with the legal community. Today's panel discussion is the long-standing issue within our criminal jurisprudence, Article 21, and the issue of bail seem to have multiple discussion and interpretation by the Apex Court over the years. Before we introduce the panel, let me first explain how the attendee can interact with the panelists. There's a symbol of a hand button where you can press on it and we will connect you to the panelists, or there's a chat box where you can type your questions and we will connect it to the panelists where they can answer your questions. And please remember, you can log into our previous seminars by logging into our website, Tiwari and Associates. I will now hand over to our capable associate, Mr. Rakesh and Reginald, to introduce their panelists who's worked really hard to organize this seminar. Thank you, everyone.
Ellarkum vanakkam. So, Mr. V. Raghavachari sir has over 35 years of experience in all areas of litigation. He began his career in the Madras High Court in 1986 under his legacy, under the legacy of his father, R.S. Venkatachari sir. He has appeared before several full benches of the Madras High Court, touching upon several questions of importance, both on the civil as well as on the criminal side. On the civil side, he has a wide range of practice in all areas. He is a well-known authority on Hindu law and takes a deep and abiding interest in the scripture. The Sri V. Raghavachari sir has also been appointed an amicus curiae by the High Court on several occasions. Most notably, the case that unearthed a fake marriage racket in the Chennai, resulting in the High Court issuing directions to make registrations of marriages compulsory in Tamil Nadu. Sri Raghavachari sir has also appeared before the Honorable Supreme Court, the National Company Law Tribunal, and also various other courts across the country.
We have the Advocate General, sir.
Of course.
Hello, good evening, everyone. Even though our panelists, as ma'am just said, will not need any introduction, I'll still make a small endeavor to introduce Mr. Niloy Datta sir and Sri Kaushik Goswami sir. Mr. Niloy Datta sir joined the bar in March 1983 and was designated as a senior advocate by the Honorable Guwahati High Court in 1999. Having been appointed to the office of the Advocate General of Arunachal Pradesh in 2008 till 2012, he was appointed as Advocate General for a second term in 2016. Datta sir has also served as the Advocate General of Nagaland from 2004 till 2006 and as the Additional Advocate General of Assam from 2001 to 2002. Datta sir has served in several leadership roles in the bar as Chairman of the Bar Council of Assam, Nagaland, Mizoram, Arunachal Pradesh and Sikkim till January 2020, which is very recent, and continues to be a member of the council. He is a former president of the Guwahati High Court Bar Association and is an advisor to the All Assam Lawyers Association. Datta sir is the president of Studio Nilima, which is a collaborative network for research and capacity building, which is a research collective which works on interdisciplinary issues of law, development, and policy in Northeast India, and also provides free legal services and legal awareness amongst the marginalized sections of society. Studio Nilima also actively works in the area of prison reforms and has been engaging with correctional homes of Assam since 2017. Just to tell you the wide range in which sir has worked, Niloy Datta sir also has an experience as an international cricket umpire, where sir has been active in sports administration and law. Datta sir has been a member of the Supreme Court appointed Justice Mukul Mudgal Committee to look into betting and fixing into the Indian Premier League. He has also served as the acting president and vice president of the Assam Cricket Association, apart from serving as the vice chairman, Club Licensing Appellate Tribunal, and All India Football Federation. Even though it can possibly not encapsulate everything that sir has done over the years, it was a humble attempt at the same. And moving on to introduce our very eminent moderator for today's session, Shri Kaushik Goswami. Goswami sir enrolled with the Bar Council of Assam, Nagaland, Meghalaya, Manipur, Tripura, and Arunachal Pradesh on the 27th of July 2000. He started his own independent practice in 2006 and was appointed as the standing counsel for the North Cachar Autonomous Council, Haflong, and to the Guwahati High Court. He has continued to appear before the Guwahati High Court and various other high courts in various matters including labor law, industrial law, contract and taxation law, and various criminal and civil appeals including arbitration matters. So continues to also appear before various civil and district courts as well as various tribunals including the Central Administrative Tribunals and the Land Revenue Court, etc. With these words, where I believe that we at least have tried to encapsulate the extremely rich contribution of all of our panelists to the field of law and otherwise, I would now like to hand over the dais to Shri Kaushik Goswami sir for his introductory remarks on today's topic. Thank you. So,
Thank you.
Thank you, Rakesh. Good evening, everyone. Article 21 and right to bail, as such, do not need any introduction. Article 21 is not static. It is ever evolving. It's dynamic. Ever since the enforcement of the Constitution of India, the scope of Article 21 has widened. Say from A.K. Gopalan's case to Puttaswamy's case, the right to privacy judgment, and so on. Personal liberty is what is sought to be protected under Article 21. What is personal liberty? It is one's freedom to do as one pleases, subject to the restraints made by law. The liberty under Article 21 is not absolute. It can be taken away by an established procedure of law. For instance, if a person commits a crime, he's liable to be arrested. Even here, the Constitution has certain checks and measures. As we produce before the magistrate within 24 hours of such arrest, in order to protect the liberty of such person, a person when arrested can be released on bail subject to certain conditions. Bail is a necessary concomitant of Article 21. Now, bail, as we understand, is the discretion of the court. How this discretion will be exercised, what factors to be considered, everything is laid down by the Supreme Court, namely the gravity of the offense, the chances of fleeing from justice. Apart from this, the possibility of threatening a witness, the possibility of threatening the complainant, these has to be gone into. In fact, for a long time in India, there was no protection given to the witnesses. In 2019, the Supreme Court has approved the Witness Protection Scheme submitted by the central government and has made it a law. I'm yet to find out whether the same has been implemented or not. But while giving bail, granting bail, various interest has to be looked into. Society has an interest because every crime is against society. The liberty vis-a-vis the societal interest has to be carefully weighed. A court has a major role in weighing such conflicting interests. Now, in terms of social welfare legislation, say for instance, the POCSO Act. Mens rea is presumed At the very stage when a crime is reported to have been committed, it has come to my notice in few cases relating to POCSO, bail are being granted to the accused. Now the question which arises in such circumstances is, if mens rea is presumed in such legislation, what is the weight of the liberty of such person, the accused? Because it has a devastating effect on the victims under POCSO Act, the child, namely the child victim. These are issues which today perhaps could be discussed. We have two eminent speakers with us, Sri Niloy Datta, Senior Advocate, Sri V. Raghavacharya, Advocate, Madras High Court. Now I would request Sri Raghavacharya to kindly address the issue. Thank you.
Thank you. Now we have the Advocate General. He has the right of precedence. I am thankful to him to having given me it. The entire issue is something like this. It is not as if the concept of bail is unknown to our jurisprudence. Early in point of time, what is called as muchulika, all is required is if the person is accused, he should be secured at the appropriate point of time. Therefore, they would ask him to give a muchulika. The same rule had been extended even by the Mughals. They use a different format, but the entire issue is to secure the witness. That is the first point that we have to bear in mind. At some point of time, the Britishers thought that so far as the Indians are concerned, they are lesser human being or species. They framed certain rules. In fact, if you see 1923 Calcutta and even the Privy Council of the year 90, I have given the details of the judgment in my notes, where you would find the Privy Council says there is no inherent power so far as the court is concerned to grant bail. See the extent to which they have gone then. The entire jurisprudence had developed later in point of time. 1915, this is precisely what you rather mentioned, A.K. Gopalam. The gentleman was a congressman, went to jail several times, and thereafter he joined communist, and he continued to go to jail. This happened between 1947 and 1950. If you had seen, that gentleman had been knocking the doors of prison more often than anybody else. In 1950, sometime in March, a detention order was passed against him. He knocked the doors again. This time he challenged the provisions of the detention laws. Straight away he went to Supreme Court, argued by a very eminent lawyer, the father of the present Attorney General. What happened, the Supreme Court says, as far as the procedure established by law is concerned, if there is a rule or regulation by which a person could be detained, there ends. Beyond that, it doesn't have any right at all. That is a difference they made between due process. Karat Singh, rather in 1963, raised the issue to the level of a privacy right. If it is going to be violated, we can rather step in. Then came in 1978 Maneka Gandhi. In Maneka Gandhi, to a larger, the principles had been overruled, and ultimately they said the due process principle would operate. Thereafter, if you kindly see, one after the other, Justice Krishna Iyer, Justice Bhagavati, Chinnappa Reddy, all of them joined together. They changed the entire law so far as the citizen is concerned, starting from the bail conditions that has to be imposed, whether the onerous condition could be imposed, what is the effect of an under trial. Then Uzainara cartoon case, Justice Bhagavati had at least on 4 occasions the court sat on the principle and said the under trial, if they had served for more than the period by which they could be punished, they have to be rather sent out, the liberty should be granted to them. Then the bail conditions have been looked into. In Motiram case, it is one of the fantastic cases of His Lordship Justice Krishna Iyer, where he had said a gentleman was unable to give security. When he was not able to give security, his brother offered a property elsewhere in the neighboring state. Court said, we will not take it. After all, it is 10,000 rupees. Court said, it will not take it. The matter goes to Supreme Court, where His Lordship Justice Krishna Iyer said, you can't impose such condition which is incapable of being rather complied with. And the relaxation so far as the condition came. If you see between 1978 to 1983, almost in 5 years, there was a shift from the state's power to that of the citizens' right. Originally, it was the state which is supreme. It can decide and dictate as to who should be in prison, even if the prison is over-flooded. It is ultimately for the state to say that. Slowly, that shifted towards the rights of an individual. His Lordship Justice Krishna Iyer said, you have to balance as between these two people. If it is going to be the state, kindly find out whether by letting out the individual concerned, is anybody going to suffer? 2, by letting out the accused, would a damage be caused to the societal interest? 3, by detaining him, what is the benefit that you are going to gain? If this gentleman is going to have some roots in the society, they took over the American concept. If some root in the society is available, why not leave him so that he could be secured at a later point of time? Bail, the concept of bail is that ultimately we have to secure a person to at the time when the case is going to be rather conducted. He can't plea and then delay the entire process. This is the purpose for which the entire bail concept had been introduced. What happened later in point of time? Several laws, special laws have been introduced, and each and every law was to the effect in case there had been an accused, say for instance under POSCO, the burden of proof had been shifted on most of the economic laws. The burden had been shifted from the state to that of the accused, where the burden of innocence had to be established by the accused. He says he should be in a position to go before the court and say he is innocent, and then he has to come out. Even in these type of cases, if you find the judgment of the Supreme Court on the recent times, they come to the aid of the accused. The recent pronouncement of Mr. Chidambaram, originally Justice Bhanumati was under the impression that if it is going to be an economic offence, no bail. Economic offences, a person should not be granted bail. 1980 Supreme Court specifically goes into the issue, even in respect of economic offences, bail could be granted. That was the pronouncement in the 5-bench judgment of the Supreme Court, Gurbakh Singh. That is recently followed by the 5-bench judge consisting of in 2020, delivered on 29th of March. The same judgment had been applied with full vigor. We have to look into the aspect of what exactly is the nature of complaint when it comes before the court. If the nature of complaint is economic offence, offence against the women and child, then in the case of quote or terrorism, in all these type of cases, it is unsafe to let out the person to move freely. On the other hand, even if it is going to be a case of murder, in fact, 1923, I had given you a report as to what exactly had taken place. Very humorously, Mr. Gaur had put a question to H.S. Gaur, he had raised a question to which the doctor had answered in the assembly. The entire discussion that went on there was about 3 brothers fighting with each other. One brother as against the 2. He finished he killed one of his brother. He was jailed. It was a daylight murder. The entire issue that came before for discussion is what would be the position if this gentleman is rather let out for the purposes of on bail. Very humorously, the discussion goes on. He says he knows pretty well he is going to be hanged. As soon as this gentleman is let out on bail, he is going to go finish the other brother, knows the fate, and he will complete the entire process. Therefore, in these type of cases, bail is not a must. This gentleman should be retained in jail. All depends upon, ultimately everything depends upon The factual scenario, this is also the Supreme Court has clarified. The factual scenario should be taken into consideration. What is the purpose in rather overburdening the jail? At the same time, if it is going to be in the spur of the moment an incident has taken place, let me assume spur of the moment an accident has taken place. I won't call it a murder because it is not a premeditated incident. Under those circumstances, it is up to the Sessions Court or the High Court to assess the entire fact and come to a conclusion whether bail should be granted or not. It is not an omnibus situation by which one could say it is a case of a murder, therefore no bail. Or it is going to be a case of a life lost. I won't call it a murder, a life lost. Therefore, a bail could not be granted. All depends upon the factual scenario, the intention of the party, whether he feels remorse, whether the society, and I won't say the society had accepted, probably I would put it the other way about. The society rather still commands certain respectability in that place as a respectable man, nothing more than that. If all these incidents are taken into consideration, and the trial is not going to be hindered by this gentleman, bail could be granted. Let me go to the other part of the case. Now we have certain scheduled caste and scheduled tribe. These are the cases where very often we face a problem. What exactly happened in these type of cases? There is going to be, I do not know about the northern part, at least in this part of the country, where if there is going to be a minor dispute between two neighbors, if one of his servant is available, he will ask his servant to go and lodge a complaint under the scheduled caste and scheduled prevention of atrocities. What exactly happens? This gentleman will be rather running around to get bail. Court say the provision says no bail. 438 will not apply. In these type of cases, the recent pronouncement of the Supreme Court, which you would have seen, says if it is going to be a case of no prima facie case, bail could be granted even under Article 227. One judge says even under 482 it could be granted. But I have my own reservation. 482, when it is excluded under the statute, you can't say there is going to be a prima facie case. But 226 is always available. We have also seen cases where this has actually happened. A nurse comes late. She belongs to the scheduled caste community. The doctor doesn't even know that she belongs to the scheduled caste. He just queries her as to why she is late. She lodges a complaint. If you are going to apply the strict rule of law, a bail is not applicable. It could not be extended to these people. Kindly see the fate, his right, liberty, and much more. This what you call it as a dignity that he has commanded in the society would be lost in no minute. If he is detained in prison even for a day, here is a case of a doctor. If you detain him for a day, what is going to happen? He will be suspended from employment. He has to go. He will be on the defensive, and ultimately, with dignity, he can't go and work in the very same hospital. These are all events which the court has to take into consideration, be if under Article 226 or whatever, and ensure that protection is given. That fortunately, the Supreme Court came to the aid. Further development which recently that had taken place. So far, I can say, so far as Madras is concerned, there appears to be a dispute under 167. One judge of this COVID situation, that is what I want to rather place for consideration. A judge of the Madras High Court by name Mr. Swaminathan had said whether it is COVID or not, he is entitled for a default bail. Another judge said the central government has issued a notification by which the period of limitation could be excluded. Therefore, the period has to be excluded. It cannot be taken into consideration. The matter has been referred to a division bench. Fortunately, in the interim, the Kerala High Court has to take upon a similar situation, as well as the Chhattisgarh. Both these courts says, when it comes to 167, I am on the rights of the individual here. When it comes to default bail, we don't look into anything at all. What we see is whether the period of 60 or 90 days had expired. If the period of 60 days had expired and the charge sheet has not been filed, automatically the accused is entitled for a bail, provided he has got the security ready. It is a duty of the court. Way back in 1978, Hussain Ara Khatun, which all of you know, the judge has to ask the concerned saying, do you have the security ready so that I can let you on bail? In case he gets it, the obligation is upon the court. It doesn't even have a right to remand. I would rather put it, it has no right to remand. It has to necessarily enlarge the accused on bail. Whether the period of limitation, this is the issue now props up for consideration. Whether the period of limitation of 60 days could be extended either by the central government or in the form of any notification that is being issued by the state for the purposes of rather postponing the filing of the charge sheet. The Supreme Court in Hussain's case in 2017 had very clearly said the question of limitation cannot be extended at all. It applies, the period, the stipulated applies with all rigor, and as soon as the period is over, the gentleman has to be released, provided he has a security. You might ask me what would be the position if there is going to be if he doesn't make a bail bonds ready or surety has not been made available. In those circumstances, in the interregnum, if a charge sheet is filed, that becomes valid. The detention is not illegal. And why I am pointing out to this issue is one query had been raised. As soon as the bail bond was to be filed, if a gentleman fails to file, accused has failed to file the bail bond, what would be the position in case the charge sheet is filed in the interregnum before the production of the bail bond and the security not having been furnished? What would be the position? The Supreme Court yet again says those are the cases where by which a person could be detained and the detention doesn't become unlawful. But ultimately, what we have to see is under 167, which had been clarified by the 5-bench bench of the Supreme Court. Whether on the expiry of the period of 60 or 90 days, depending upon the offense, if a charge sheet has not been filed, what is the right that has been guaranteed to the accused? Court says he is entitled for a bail. Kindly see the word used is he is entitled for a bail on protection of security. In case the security had not been furnished and the charge sheet had been filed, what would be the position? He has to go for a regular bail. He is not entitled for being released on the ground of a default bail. This is so far as 167 is concerned. Then you might ask me, I'm only speaking on the rest of them. I had given a detailed notes to enable you to appreciate the persons who are rather watching to appreciate. Probably my learned friend would have uploaded. I'm not going to touch upon the basics. What would be the position of the police bail and other under section 42 and the precautionary principle under 170? All these things I have set forth there. Original, I'll just go to D.K. Basu. Recently, if you see, everyone would say D.K. Basu principle. Kindly look into the D.K. Basu principle. That was rather way back in 1997, 1 SCC, page 416. The Supreme Court had issued certain guidelines as to what should be done in the event of the arrest. Many of these principles have been incorporated under section 41B and 41C of the Code of Criminal Procedure. One need not rather trouble the barring except two of the principles. Almost all the principles have been accepted. Once it has been accepted, we can fall back upon the statutory norm instead of rather quoting again D.K. Basu. If there is going to be a statutory violation, we stand on a better footing. You can say there is a violation of the statute. The police maybe are entitled for bail as of right, or there is going to either discharge me on account of the basic principles not having been complied with. We can even go for a habeas corpus if a person is going to be detained without rather resorting to due process. So far as D.K. Basu is concerned, if one looks into 41B and 41C, it covers the issue. And three aspects which I would like to place for your consideration, because I do not want to consume the time of the Advocate General. I would rather place three aspects for consideration. Earlier in point of time, when a statute, a special statute, For instance, recently we would have seen the judgment of His Lordship Justice Nariman in Nikesh Tarachand Shah. That was a case of a PMLA, where a twin condition has to be satisfied. If any of the twin condition or the burden of proof rests upon the person concerned, and the second one is a public prosecutor is entitled for a notice without rather hearing him, and in case he has a serious objection on the subject, the application has to be thrown out. For the first time, the Supreme Court comes to assess whether the basis on which a bail law denies a right to the person of seeking liberty could be sustained. Secondly, where if it is going to be arbitrary, let me be very clear on the question of arbitrariness, you cannot set aside a law. But here is a case where the Supreme Court says if it is going to be manifestly arbitrary, the power available under Article 32 or 226 has to be taken recourse to, and the entire provision could be set aside. This is a case where this onerous bail condition, which was originally imposed under law, was looked into by His Lordship Justice Nariman, and he says the entire proceedings are illegal. Ultimately, when we speak about bail and Article 21, what all we have to see is the liberty of the individual concerned. While we assess the liberty, I'm not going to trouble myself, rather asking you to look into the various judgments. The judgments are available on the notes as well as on the files. The Supreme Court has quoted many number of cases where they would have said how to balance. What should be seen in all these type of cases? The societal interest, one, as against the individual. If the individual interest is overbearing, or I would put it the other way, if the interest of the society is to detain the person rather than allowing him to be free, it has to prevail. For instance, if it is going to be a case of a terrorist, the safety of the gentleman, I would rather go to the extent of saying the safety of the terrorist as well as the people lies in the terrorist being detained. You allow him to, if he is going to be reformed, if he is going to rather let me assume a case where this gentleman is going to give certain particulars about the organization to the policeman, based upon which they are able to apprehend a few. If you enlarge the type of person on bail, the safety of the individual is lost. Under these circumstances, one has to rather weigh what would be better for ideally conducting a proceeding. Ultimately, if the court can conduct the case while seeking of the person concerned at any point of time with ease, it is better he is retained. Secondly, you should also take into consideration a concept of speedy trial. In many of these cases, if you see why this bail concept has been developed at all to such larger extent. In point of time, all of you might know, the judges in criminal cases in England, the judges will be on circuit. The sheriff has to apprehend. The sheriff would have a lot other work other than apprehending these persons. Once he apprehends, he lodges them in the gaol. They will be settling there for years together without the cases being taken up. That is the principle by which the concept of bail was introduced in London. Ours is something different. The concept of bail was introduced on account of the incapacity of the judges, namely in conducting the criminal cases, to go and conduct the matter in circuit and to adjudicate the matter. That is the reason we got the concept of bail. When speedy trial, when we speak about speedy trial during these times, one has to rather take into consideration what is the impact that would have on criminal proceedings. Not less than the Supreme Court has assessed, there are cases which are pending for more than 20 years. There are cases, therefore they issued a direction. In some of the cases, if you had seen, a direction is issued to complete the matter if it is going to be of a simple nature. If you see in Hussein's case, this aspect had been deliberated in length, where they would have issued a direction if it is going to be 5 years or more try to complete it within the end of the year. If it is going to be 2 years, grant him the bail. If it is going to be a case of a lesser offense, try to complete it in some process. These directions are given not only to dispose of the matter at the earliest, but also to ensure that the jails are clear. What exactly is happening now? More than 60% of the cases where the gentlemen are allowed to rather languish in jail without the case being conducted, not only suffer the incarceration in the society, but also the state has to spend on them. What is the purpose in keeping a gentleman in jail and the state spending on him, and the judiciary is also unable to rather dispose of the cases? But to resolve all these issues, several directions have been issued by the Supreme Court, at least from 2001, where you would have seen the directions have been issued by the court as to complete the entire case within a particular point of time. If these directions are complied, many of the cases would have been disposed of. Also, see the fate of under trials. In cases of under trials, if you take into consideration, it is Husainara Cartoon 78. They dealt with the issue where they found persons who are in jail for more than 14 years. A gentleman had fled the arms of law for 10 years. He was apprehended. He was got to court. He was languishing in jail for 12 years. Ultimately, the Supreme Court said speedy justice means real justice, not allowing a person to be in jail and adjudicating the matter at your own sweet will. So, if you look into the entire concept of Article 21 now, originally it speaks, the language of Article 21 says, yes, procedure established by law. But once we read due process into it, also look into the fact that the dignity of an individual is involved, a human right is involved, a life is involved in Article 21. Ultimately, the court has to yield in favor of the rights of the citizen, balancing it with that of the state. This would be my very humble, I would say, submission. The Advocate General, now to the Advocate General.
Thank you, Mr. Raghavachari. It has been a wonderful presentation, and lot many work which I thought I would do has been done. So I am relieved. Rather, I am enlightened today. I had an occasion to go through your notes, and I think it's wonderful, and I would request the organizers to upload that note so that it benefits the attendees. There are a lot many cases which have been discussed there pertaining to Article 21 vis-a-vis the bail laws, and there would be lot many things to know from them for the attendees, who I am sure there are people who are eagerly trying to learn something as regards the relationship between the two. When I go into the question of Article 21 and the right to bail, I would like to point out a very important thing which I think is relevant, is the bail is something which has been there right from the Hindu law of governance. Thereafter, when the Mughals came, Mughals also had the system of letting prisoners out. Of course, their system was because of the Zira system which was already there in Mughal scriptures, the Muslim scriptures, I'm sorry. When the British came, they for the first time introduced the English law of bail and making it suitable for the Indian context, for the natives. For the British, the system was slightly different. For the natives, as they call us, the system was, which they termed as Musalka and Zaman. Zaman being Jamin wala, Jamin who was the bailer, the surety. Musalka was the bond. Thereafter, when they introduced the Criminal Procedure Code, this Musalka and Zamani was introduced, whereas they continued. It went, our constitution came, Article 21 came. There was not much change just because Article 21 was introduced. Article 21 was debated in the Constituent Assembly, and the matter was discussed from the angle of the American law pertaining to due process. No person shall be deprived of his life and liberty without following the procedure laid down in law. That was what was accepted, not without following the due process of law. Due process at that point of time was not accepted by the Constituent Assembly as good enough, or rather would be more liberal than what the Constituent Assembly thought. They relied more on the procedure laid down by law. And in A.K. Gopalan, therefore, the question was very limited. They limited the law as the liberty to be restricted within the meaning of procedure laid down in law. And the question was, if there is a law, if there is a valid law, then there would be no question of allowing liberty to prevail over the concept of the procedure laid down in law. Now, this matter continued to be debated over the period of time, and you rightly pointed out that in Maneka Gandhi, the Constitution bench virtually turned the law into a different line altogether. Over the period of time when the question of the death by hanging, whether it was constitutional, was looked into for the first time, we had the substantive law of due process, which came into the Indian criminal judicial system. The death by hanging was there. This was a law enacted by competent parliament. And therefore, it was a procedure which was enacted by the law. But the validity of the law, whether it was fair, reasonable, on the basis of the judgment of in Maneka Gandhi, was looked into. It is a different matter that the challenge was rejected. But it was the first case where a criminal system prevalent in the country was challenged on the ground of due process, substantive due process, and developed from the question of procedural due process. Now that was a great leap. There has been time when Article 21 has been debated by the Supreme Court itself within themselves, in the sense that in Article 21, does it encompass the entire liberty, the entire variety of the rights which are required to be given so as to have a full and competent and comfortable life? When life was meant not only as an animal existence, the question was therefore whether the rights in Article 19 are encompassed in Article 21. Or rather, the other way around, was Article 21 inclusive of all the rights of Article 19. There have been changes from time to time. A.K. Gopalan said no. I think it was Kharak Singh, where also Supreme Court said the rights of Article 19 are not included in Article 21. Though Maneka Gandhi said Article 21 includes all the rights included in Article 19. But again, it takes a turn in Kartar Singh. So this dispute within the Supreme Court, without overruling each other, remains as to whether Article 21 is encompassing all the rights of Article 19. But these are issues which will not affect our discussion on the right to bail. What I was trying to think to myself was whether the Article 21 has brought about some radical change in the functioning of the bail system in the courts which implement for the question of granting bail or rejecting bail. We start off with the question of the bail is determined by the magistracy. And it is absolutely clear in my mind that the poor in this country are in a disadvantage when the question of bail is discussed in the courts. There are reasons why I therefore think that when we talk about the granting or not granting of bail, the question of Article 14 has also to be looked into. Article 14 requires that no person shall be deprived of right to equality before law and or equal protection under the law. Do we really apply Article 14 in the criminal courts of this country? Article 21 has expanded the jurisdiction of the courts. It requires certain things to be done. But is it actually done? That is the crux of the issue. The poor doesn't get the equality of a rich man for various reasons. Number one, the most important being, the good lawyers will not be available unless they are passionate enough to come for rendering free legal aid. Otherwise, it is the money part which gets the biggest lawyers to go for bail of their own clients. The poor is left with very poor representation in the courts. So when we talk about Article 21 as regards bail, we have to have people, lawyers, who are well trained in the various intricacies of the issues under which the bail conditions operate, which further requires that the state, when it has the obligation to provide better legal services, if not entirely free legal services, then it is the burden of the state under Article 21 read with Article 14 to provide adequate training and expertise to lawyers who, because of their own capacity or incapacity, has to defend the cases of the poor. This is what I think is one of the most important, relevant things which the government, the state needs to do insofar as the question of bringing justice of liberty to the doorsteps of the poor. Having said that, what I would like to further emphasize that as regards why bail is given or why bail is rejected is pretty well known, well crystallized, and you have dealt with them very thoroughly. I need not go into that aspect of the matter. As regards even anticipatory bail, which is a word which we have coined for ourselves, it's not there, but the question is, there is an order that you release a person on bail even in the event of his arrest. That is the basic. In anticipation of arrest, an order is given. But he has to be arrested first. And thereafter, bail is granted. Even that is getting crystallized very slowly and steadily. In fact, there was a big debate as to whether anticipatory bail should be restricted within a time frame, whether it should be of limited duration. Two series of judgments continue to fight with each other. And ultimately, I think in that Sushila Agarwal case in January, the Constitution Bench has clarified the matter. And I would request our friends who are attending this to go through Sushila Agarwal. It clarifies the entire debate about whether anticipatory bail should be. And it has been said very clearly in that judgment by the Supreme Court that the view earlier that Article 21 will not apply to questions of anticipatory bail has been rejected, and it has been made very clear that Article 21 also comes into play, because the liberty of a person who comes for anticipatory bail is to be looked into under the pedestal of Article 21, life and liberty. I would like to stress one last point before I sum it up. The question of life, insofar as bail is concerned, has developed in the recent times because of two set of cases. One set of cases, and this is peculiar to Assam, so I would like to stress on that. In Assam, we have a problem of these foreigners, and they are, if they are caught, tried, convicted, and thereafter they have to be deported to the foreign country from where they come. There is another group who are located and who are put before the foreigners tribunal, and they give you an opinion. This is a person who is a declared foreign national and is detained till he is to be deported. In both the cases, it is seen that deportation is virtually not possible, and so therefore there has been questions of inordinate delay, rather indefinite incarceration of people in the jails of Assam. There are 6 such detention centers. The question was dealt with by the Supreme Court, and on the basis of Article 21 as it is laid down, there cannot be an animal existence in the matter of life. The Supreme Court passed an order directing release of such persons if they have served, if they are in detention for 3 years or more. In fact, there were people who have been detained indefinitely for nearly 9 years, 10 years. So if they were for more than 3 years, then they would be released on bail of rupees 1 lakh. This has been brought down recently by another modification, which says if they have been detained for more than 2 years, they would be released on bail of rupees 5,000. This is a development in a question pertaining to foreigners, and on the plea, on the basis of, not plea, on the basis of Article 21, which applies to even foreigners, because the word is person, and the person includes a citizen as well as a foreigner. The second aspect of life in the questions of bail has come up because of this COVID-19 pandemic. Because of the COVID-19 pandemic and the overcrowding in the jails, the question of keeping people in jail under trials, in jail awaiting trial, touched the court's conscience, and they took it up suo motu and has directed constitution of committees led by one judge, sitting judge of the High Court, which would look into whether people who are awaiting trial for offences where the sentence would be less than 7 years, whether they can be released. And it has been found that thousands of such people have been released. And the issue therefore is, there is a development in law insofar as question of life is concerned, because the only consideration of releasing such persons from jail was that their life was in danger. Because of COVID-19, no possible social distancing, no possibility of finding out adequate medical facilities within the jail. So life being in danger was the thinking, was the guiding force for the people to be released on bail. So that is a very interesting development insofar as people awaiting deportation and people who are suffering the tension of their life being in danger. I would have to, I think, give it up to Mr. Goswami to sum it up all, because our time is still 5 o'clock, but it's a great opportunity to meet Mr. Raghavachari. I'm grateful, and hopefully when the COVID pandemic will be over, we will be meeting in person. I wish all the attendees who have taken the pains of listening to us, as the judges always do. So I am grateful to you all who have joined us. And Eliza, who is our standing counsel, Arunachal Pradesh, in Supreme Court, I wish you well, do well, and thank you all for giving me this opportunity of having a beautiful evening. Thank you very much.
So there are questions
Thank
that
you,
the
Mr.
panelists want to
Datta.
ask.
One thing, sir, the Sushila's case is in 2020 online Supreme Court at page 98. One. The Supreme Court had recently in legal aid matter, they have said they have to engage in serious matters lawyers with not less than 10 years of experience. That I think is too short a period. If a person is going to conduct a criminal case, or say a murder case, a much more individual is required.
Yes, we have few questions in our chat. Yes, ma'am.
So we are opening a question, platform for the questions to be raised by the attendees right now.
First-
Sir,
first we read out the
so
questions.
there's a question sent by Mr. Aditya Ambrose for Mr. Raghavacharya. So can I read it for you? Am I audible?
You are audible, but I'm not able to see the question.
So he's typed the question and sent it to us. So can I read the question for you that he's asked?
Yes, ma'am.
He's asked, according to section 167 CRPC, the accused is liable to be released on bail. If the charge sheet is not filed against him within 90 days from the date of his arrest, it is not always possible to investigate the case comprehensively within this period, particularly case having interstate or trans ramification. This results in accused involving grave crimes being unjust enlarged on bail. While on one side, the right of the accused is to be kept in mind, the right of the victim and the justifiable sense of carrying out the trial is also to be borne in mind. Isn't this provision weighing heavily in the favor of the accused? And so isn't an amendment to provide another 90 days to the investigation agency in case of grave crimes necessary if on the report of the investigating officer the court is satisfied that there are sufficient reason not for filing charge sheet within the initial period of 90 days?
What you say is right, but kindly see the situation it was earlier in point of time. Under the 1898 Act, if you are not in a position to do within 24 hours, time that was granted was only 15 days. Now the situation is different. They give 90 days to rather probe into a larger crime. Normally what they do, they file an interim report. Based on the interim report, they get the time extended, or for we would call in what they do insofar as some of the districts are concerned, they will file a report and take it back. And as far as the magistrate is concerned, there is something on his file. So the remand is extended. Whether it is justified or not, it is a different matter altogether. But 90 days, I think it is sufficiently long period. You are only looking at the angle of the state. State has a huge machinery. In those days, if they could do it within 15 days, I'm hard put to think why can't they do it in a lesser period? 90 days, 3 months. If it is going to be a case of a murder, can't they complete the process in 3 months? If it is going to be, let me assume a case of which has some international rather implications. In those type of cases, maybe you can file a report, seek for extension, or onerous condition could be imposed upon the accused. Take his passport, do not allow him to move about. Even in one of the cases where we saw, the cell phone was not given to the concerned accused. He was not allowed. It is an idle theft case in Tamil Nadu, where the cell phone was called upon to be surrendered. These are, and he was under home arrest. He was not allowed to move, despite the fact we say he has got a bail. The gentleman stayed at home. These type of onerous conditions could be rather imposed, rather than saying that discharge, move once and for all. Yes, madam. You are not audible.
Thanks, thanks.
Yes.
Am I audible now, sir? I'm sorry.
Yes. Yes.
May I just add one thing on that?
Yes, sir.
what is being followed here in this part of the country, I'm not very sure what's going on there or in Delhi. The police, the IO, if we can't finish an investigation, what they do is to file a part charge sheet within that particular time. So the question of default bail doesn't even come in. He takes the permission under 173(8) and proceeds thereafter. And so, and this has been upheld by the Supreme Court in lot many cases from Assam. We were challenged that this is a fraud in the power of the IO, but it has been upheld by the Supreme Court, and people are held on the grounds of their merits of the case without being bothered about default bail.
Mr. Vishnu Gupta, can you please ask your question? We're connecting Mr. Vishnu Gupta for the next question.
Yes, sir. The question is like sometime. Are you able to hear me?
Yes, Mr. Gupta.
Yeah. Sometimes the bail usually comes with a condition that accused shall not leave the country without court permission. What if the person who is seeking the bail resides out of India and work out of India? Right. So whether this is a matter of Article 21 or Article 19 to remove this condition from the bail application.
It also depends upon the nature of offense. Now your question is, should there be a condition imposed while an order is passed granting bail that a person should surrender his passport? All depends upon the nature of offense that is committed. If it is going to be a minor offense, nobody is going to say. If it is going to be a serious offense, certainly directing surrender of passport to enable the gentleman not to flee justice is important. You know the case of Karthik Chidambaram. His passport was called upon to be surrendered. Later in point of time, it was given to him. Twice he visited London. Hello. Kaushik,
Even in the 2G, even in the 2G case, the persons had to surrender their passports, but anytime they wanted to go for their business work to various places, and one of the accused was from Dubai, and he was always present in the court, but whenever he had to go, he took the permission from the court and got the passport, went back to his own place of business, and used to come back. So there has not been such a serious problem on this count.
After all, it is a condition. We can file an application before the appropriate court, seek for relaxation, resurrender the passport.
Okay. There's a question by Miss Andita Sharma for Mr. Niloy Dutt and Mr. Kaushik Goswami. Where can I read it, sir? Am I audible?
Sure.
Where are we on the usage of technology like GPS, enabled device, etc. on the bail application detainees? Is there any guidelines with respect to that kind of restriction which cannot be applied to a person released on bail? Can I read again the question?
If I have understood the question correctly, it's a question pertaining to technological development, whether that can be profitably used insofar
Yes.
granting bail.
Yes,
This
sir.
question did crop up in the foreigners case which I was talking about. When Justice Gogoi led bench had to look into this matter of releasing people who will be ultimately deported, they asked the government to suggest how these people can be kept trace throughout the bail period, so that when the time of deportation comes, they can be located and sent. The government of Assam had suggested that they should be using chips, microchips, to be inserted. I think I'm not very sure of how they do it, but that would keep a track of where the people would go. The Supreme Court rejected that, and in fact, therefore, at that point of time, they introduced that very serious bail security of rupees 1 lakh per person. So that question did crop up in a bail matter. But as on today, using that technology of microchips is not available in this country.
Mr.
Recently,
Goswami, your
Yes, recently
Your
the
take.
Jharkhand High Court, in one case, because of the situation that is prevailing today, while granting bail, has imposed the condition of downloading the Arogya Setu application. That has been done in a recent case.
But it was stayed by the Supreme Court, no?
Yes, yes.
Okay, there's another question for Mr. Sunil from Madras has asked Mr. Raghavacharya. Sir, I'm reading the questions for you. Has not the sacrosanct principle of bail before jail been diluted by different courts, especially in the case of under trials? How important is bail in the current situation when courts, especially at the session level, dismiss anticipatory bails, holding that the charges made out seem to be serious? This is by Mr. Sunil, Madras High Court.
It is a discretion that is given to the judge. If a judge dismisses at the stage of sessions, there is always an application to the High Court. Ultimately, it is a discretion. The assessment is taken by a learned judge. He says a bail should not be granted. It is not final. The High Court is always there. No, if I understood his question, the sessions judge has rejected the application normally. What is the effect? Every judge is entitled to accept or reject it. In case of rejection, he has to pursue elsewhere.
Mr. Niloyada, would you like to answer this question? You also want to give something input?
Sorry, I didn't get the question, so I'll pass on.
The question is, has not the sacrosanct principle of bail before jail been diluted by different courts, especially in the case of under trials? How important is bail in the current situation when court, especially at the session level, dismisses the anticipatory bail, holding that the charges made out seems to be serious?
Charges made out, I'm sorry?
Serious.
Charges made out seems to be serious.
Seem to be serious.
Seem to be serious, yeah. The question is, when the bail, anticipatory bail is required to be given, there are various considerations which my friend has already indicated. The various questions will have to be looked into by the concerned court, whether to grant bail or not to grant bail. There are no fixed stipulated formula as to how you place it. The judge is given the discretion because the Supreme Court also has indicated that the legislature has given the power to the sessions as well as the High Court on the matters of grant of anticipatory bail for the simple reason that they are people who have the judicial experience behind them and they can look into the various conditions and the peculiar features of that particular case to decide whether to grant bail or not to grant bail. So there are no fixed formulas, as my friend has already indicated. It's a matter of discretion, but that is not an absolute discretion. It's a discretion which will be guided by various factors which are available before the court. Most important of them would be to protect him if there is any malafide in the entire investigation. That is the most important part. And there are others, but this is, I think, the crucial one, because the entire concept of anticipatory bail came with the thinking process that political people would be using the matters of criminal investigation to put the opponents in the dock so as to lower the reputation. That's how it started from the Law Commission. But now, of course, there are other issues involved. So it's a matter of discretion, and it is expected that the sessions and the High Court would be, sorry. Go ahead.
In fact, you can tell my friend in Madras, right to decide includes right to decide wrongly.
That's the best way out. And the best thing for a lawyer is, if you don't get the order, you blame the judge.
So there is one more question by Ms. Nitika Bharali, which question is for Mr. Goswami. Sir, am I audible to you, Mr. Goswami? So the question is, the question of section 167 CRPC and the Supreme Court decision of extension of limitation has recently seen divergent view from the Madras High Court. There has been a similar decision in case before the Guwahati High Court. In your opinion, should the decision of Supreme Court extend limitation in case also apply to the case of default under section 167 of CRPC?
Can you read out the question little slowly?
Okay, sorry. The question is, the question of section 167 CRPC and the Supreme Court decision of extension of limitation has recently seen divergent view from the Madras High Court. Has there been a similar decision case before the Guwahati High Court? In your opinion, should the decision of Supreme Court to the extent limitation in case also apply in case of default of bail under section 167 of CRPC?
Yeah, I'll answer.
Whether similar situation have arisen in Guwahati High Court, is that the question?
Yes. Yes.
I have not come across. Maybe Mr. Datta, senior advocate, may enlighten us in case he is aware of.
Can I interfere? There is
Yes,
one
yes,
judgment,
yes.
there is one judgment of the Kerala High Court which had come, where he had accepted the judgment of Mr. Swaminathan and dissented from Justice Jayachandran. Kerala High Court judgment. I will just give the citation.
Right.
It has come in live law. Goswami, you can. I will just go through it and tell you.
Very well. Thank you, sir.
Kerala, the live law.
So we can go to the next question, Eliza.
Question is by Sri Gurnesh Karan. He says, what are the considerations to be considered by the court for anticipatory bail, and is it any different from consideration at the time of bail? This is hello,
Live law.
Mr. Goswami, can you hear the question that I just read?
Can you read it again? The difference. Can you read the question again?
The question is, what are the considerations to be considered by the court for anticipatory bail, and is it any different from consideration at the time of bail? This is by Sri
Very well.
Gunesh from Bangalore.
The consideration for anticipatory bail and a regular bail is the same. Only the magnitude of offense, the chances of fleeing from justice, whether any chances of tampering with the witnesses, the nature of acquisitions. These are the factors which, even while considering an anticipatory bail, has to be considered. Mr. Datta has already pointed out the 2020 case, Sushila Agarwal, where a detailed analysis on these factors have already been gone into. They are similar to a regular bail. Thank you.
So we are connecting now to Ms. Topi Jini, who has a question to ask. Ms. Topi Jini, can you ask your question? Connecting with
Kerala High Court doesn't period of 5 months.
Can I tell the Kerala High Court judgment?
Yes, sir.
We have got the Swaminathan. We have got the Justice Swaminathan's order in
Justice
Madurai bench.
Justice Raja Vijayaraghavan of the Kerala High Court, the judgment was pronounced 20th of May 2020. Citation Muhammad Ali versus State of Kerala.
Muhammad Ali versus State of Kerala.
Case number 2856 of 2020. It is reported in live law. The entire judgment is reported where he had accepted Swaminathan's view and specifically dissented following the judgment of the Supreme Court, where he says there cannot be an extension of time at the instance of the court.
Thank you, Mr. Raghavacharya.
Right.
The Kerala High Court apparently says the right of an accused to default bail does not get affected
Yes, sir.
on the Supreme Court's order on 23rd March 2020. That which I am reading right now, the Kerala High Court has held that the Supreme Court order dated March 23, 2020, whereby period of limitation for filing cases was extended in view of COVID-19 lockdown, does not affect the right of an accused to default bail under Section 167(2) of the CRPC. Raja Vijay Raghavan, Justice. He has held that the provisions of CRPC do not empower anyone to extend the period within which investigation must be completed. Is that the judgment you're talking about?
Exactly, sir. It follows the judgment of Achpal case and Rakesh Kumar Pal. Both of them Supreme Court 2019 14 SCC 599.
Mr. Goswami, we would like you to.
Mohammed Ali, I need to do it.
Yes,
Now
Eliza.
we would like Mr. Goswami to sum up the seminar with some comments. Mr. Goswami,
It was
we
in
would like
fact
you to have some
very
word and sum up.
enriching and enlightening to hear Mr. Niloy Datta and Mr. Raghavacharya. Very elaborately, they have discussed the subject. Mr. Raghavacharya emphasized on the balance, the conflicting interest, how the court has to balance, weigh the conflicting interest, namely the liberty and the societal interest. Whereas Mr. Datta points out that it is time for the state to step in to protect the liberty of a poor man, to come out with devices to train up the lawyers who are prepared to defend the cases of a poor person, which is possibly the need of the hour. We all have been very pleased to be educated today on the subject with the two lead panelists. Thank you so much. Yes, Eliza?
On behalf of Divine Associate, I would like to thank all the panelist members for giving us some time, and the attendee who's attended the seminar. I would really like to thank Divine Associates from our office. And I give that to Mr. Rakesh and Reginald.
Rakesh, do anything except speaking in Tamil.
Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, sir.
Romba nandri, sir. Romba nandri எல்லாருக்கும். Thank you so
sir.
much. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Thank you for attending. Thank you, sir.
I thank the Advocate General for sparing his time.
I hope we didn't make fool of ourselves.
Yes, sir. I hope it was fine. It was my first seminar too. I hope it was fine.
Okay, done.
Thank you.
Okay, sir. With that, we end the seminar.